Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining this morning. Srimad Bhagavatam, Sangha, and some japa later on. We shall continue. We're talking about Citraketu and the lessons that he learned from this experience, this pastime, and how we can learn from this as well. So we discussed Vrittasur, and now we're going back to the history of Vrittasur, how he was King Citraketu in one of his lives. Um, sometimes I think that if we were to go back into our lives, what were we before this? I was just recalling yesterday, I was going through this area in Wolverhampton, driving past, and I was thinking, just remembering a friend of mine who used to be very fond of some place there, he's very fond of it from a very young age. And I was thinking that was he like maybe in previous life he had some attachment to that area or something, he was in that area now, like why was he so attached to that place? He was just remember school days, he was always on about it. So this we've seen so many lives. So let's continue. So therefore, O great sage, please save me and my forefathers who are descending to the darkness of hell, because I have no progeny. So that's what we were discussing last time. Kindly do something so that I may have a son to deliver us from hellish conditions. So Maharaj Chitraketu, he has no son and he's very worried, and Angira Rishi has come to see him, and he notices that Maharaj seems very worried about something, something bothering him a lot. So he inquired, and then King Chitraketu responds to that. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned that according to Vedic civilization, one gets married simply to have a son who is needed to offer oblations to his forefathers. King Chitraketu responsibly desired to beget a child so that he and his forefathers might be delivered from the darkest regions. He was concerned with how to get pindan, oblations, in the next life, not only for himself, but also for his forefathers. Therefore, he requested Angira Rishi to favor him by doing something that could help him get a son. So when you offer pindan, I guess you're offering it to all the ancestors, not just your parents. In response to the request of Maharaj Chitraketu, Angira Rishi, who was born of Lord Brahma's mind, was very merciful toward him, because the sage was a greatly powerful personality. He performed a sacrifice by offering oblations of sweet rice to Tvasta. O Parikshit Maharaj, best of the births, the remnants of the food offered to the yajna were given to by the great sage Angira to the first and most perfect among Chitraketu's millions of queens. So remember, we had 10 million wives, whose name was Kritadyuti. So thereafter, the great sage told the king, "O great king, now you will have a son who will be the cause of both jubilation and lamentation." The sage then left without waiting for Chitraketu's response. So let's pray first of all. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukham karoti vachalam panghum langyate girim. Yat kirpatam ham ande Shri Guru Deen Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram Hariyam Tassat Narayan Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Sasvityasam Tato Jayam Udiriyat Nastaprishabdreshu Nityam Bhagavad Sevya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhakti Bhakti Neshtiki. So this jubilation and shoka, so you're going to get jubilation and lamentation. So the king was overwhelmed with joy when he understood that he would have a son. Because of his great jubilation, he could not actually understand the statement of the sage Angira. He accepted it to mean that there would certainly be jubilation because of the birth of his future son, but that he would be the king's only son, and being very proud of his great wealth and empire, would not be very obedient to his father. Thus the king was satisfied, thinking, let there be a son. It doesn't matter if he is not very obedient. So sometimes we think what we want to think, but we don't explore the reality of the situation. We're happy to speculate and leave it at that. As Kritika Devi, after receiving the semen of Lord Shiva from Agni, conceived a child named Skanda or Kartikya, as in this case, Kritadyuti, having received semen from Citraketu, became pregnant after eating remnants of food from the yajna performed by Angira. So after receiving semen from Maharaj Citraketu, the king of Shursen, Queen Kritadyuti gradually developed in her pregnancy, O King Parikshit, just as the moon develops during the bright fortnight. So she is now expecting a son. Therefore, thereafter, in due course of time, a son was born to the king. Hearing news of this, all the inhabitants of the state of Shursen were extremely pleased. So when the royalty was pleased, all the citizens used to be pleased. That their happiness and distress lied in the happiness and distress of the royal, or especially the king or the queen. King Chitraketu was especially pleased after purifying himself by bathing and by decorating himself with ornaments. He engaged learned Brahmins in offering benedictions to the child and performing the birth ceremony. Unto the Brahmins who took part in the ritualistic ceremony, the king gave charity of gold, silver, garments, ornaments, villages, horses, elephants, as well as 60 crores of cows. As the cloud indiscriminately pours water in the earth, the beneficent King Chitraketu, to increase the reputation, opulence, and longevity of his son, distributed the like rainfall, all desirable things to everyone. When a poor man gets some money after great difficulties, affection for the money increases daily. Similarly, when King Chitraketu, after great difficulty, received a son, his affection for the son increased day after day. Just shows how desperate he was to have a son. He didn't realize that if he's not having a son, there must be a deeper meaning behind it. But now he felt it was necessary by whatever means. He wanted a son, he got a son, he became very attached to the son. So that's very dangerous as well. Being attached to anything, whether it's your family or your wealth, is a very dangerous situation to be in. So a mother's attraction and attention to the son, like that of the child's father, excessively increased as well. The other wife, seeing Kritadyuti's son, was very agitated, as if by high fevers, with the desire to have sons. So 10 million wives, the rest of them just looking on. They felt hopeless and useless. And now the king didn't really have any interest for them. They're like a liability now, because out of the 10 million, there's only one wife literally delivered the results, the son, and the other wives were, what are they even here for? Don't really need them anymore. So as King Chitraketu fostered his son very carefully, his affection for Queen Kritadyuti increased, because now they were like complete family. But gradually he lost affection for the other wives who had no sons. So they were like, it's a burden now. The other queens were extremely unhappy due to their being sonless. Because of the king's negligence towards them, they condemned themselves in envy and lamented. A wife who has no sons is neglected at home by her husband and dishonored by her co-wives, exactly like a maidservant. Certainly, such a woman is condemned in every respect because of her sinful life. Even maidservants who are constantly engaged in rendering service to the husband are honored by the husband, and thus they have nothing for which to lament. Our position, however, is that we are maidservants of the maidservant. Therefore, we are most unfortunate. Shri Shukadev Goswami continued, being neglected by the husband and seeing Kritaduti's opulence in possessing a son, Kritaduti's co-wives always burned in envy, which became extremely strong. As the envy increased, they lost their intelligence, being extremely hard-hearted and unable to tolerate the king's neglect. They finally administered poison to the son. So the envy became chronic, they became bewildered, and they poisoned the child. Unaware of the poison administered by her co-wives, Queen Kritaduti walked within the house, thinking that her son was sleeping deeply. She didn't understand that he was now dead. Thinking that a child had been sleeping for a long time, Queen Kritaduti, who was certainly very intelligent, ordered the nurse, my dear friend, please bring my son here. When the maidservant approached the child who was lying down, she saw that his eyes were turned upwards. There was no signs of life. All his senses have stopped. And she couldn't understand that the child was, or she could understand the child was dead. Seeing this, she immediately cried, now I am doomed, and fell to the ground. In great agitation, the maidservant struck her breast with both hands and cried loudly in regretful words. Hearing a loud voice, the queen immediately came, and when she approached son, she saw that he was suddenly dead. In great lamentation, her hair and dress in disarray, the queen fell to the ground unconscious. O King Parikshit, hearing the loud crying, all the inhabitants of the palace came, both men and women. Being equally aggrieved, they also began to cry. The queens who had administered the poison also cried pretentiously, knowing full well their offense. So when King Citraketu heard of his son's death from unknown causes, he became almost blind. Because of great affection for his son, his lamentation grew like a blazing fire. And as he went to see the dead son, he kept slipping and falling on the ground. Surrounded by his ministers and other officers and the learned Brahmins present, the king approached and fell unconscious to the child's feet. His hair and dress scattered, and the king, breathing heavily, regained consciousness. His eyes were tearful and he could not speak. To show how much attachment they had to their child, that they lost all consciousness. When the queen saw her husband, King Citraketu, merged in a great lamentation and saw the dead child, who was the only son in the family, she lamented in various ways. This increased the pain in the cause of the hearts of all the inhabitants of the palace, the ministers, and all the Brahmins. The garland of flowers decorating the queen's head fell, and her hair scattered. Falling tears melted the collyrium on her eyes and moistened her breasts, which were covered with kumkum powder. As she lamented the loss of her son, her loud crying resembled the sweet sound of a rowdy bird. Alas, O Providence, O Creator, you are certainly inexperienced in creation. If you, during the lifetime of Father, you have caused the death of his son, acting in opposition to your creative laws. If you are determined to contradict these laws, you are certainly the enemy of living entities and are never merciful. So she is blaming the Lord that how can you do, the father should go before the son, and in this case, it's the other way around. How is that possible? This is the way a conditioned soul condemns the Supreme Creator when he meets reverses. Sometimes he accuses the Supreme Personality Godhead of being crooked, because some people are happy and some are not. Here, the queen blames supreme providence for her son's death. Following the creative laws, a father should die first and then his son. If the creative laws are changed according to the whims of providence, then providence certainly should not be considered merciful, but must be considered inimical to the created being. Actually, it is not the creator, but the conditioned soul who is inexperienced, because he doesn't know how the subtle laws of fruitive activity work, and without knowledge of these laws of nature, he ignorantly criticizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the difference. They don't believe in karma, or or take responsibility for their actions now or in previous lives. And like anything good happens, I did it. Anything bad happens, it's God's fault. That's our law. My Lord, you may say that there is no law that a father must die in the lifetime of his son, and that a son must be born in the lifetime of his father. Since everyone lives and dies, everyone lives and dies according to his own fruitive activity. So it's explained here. However, if fruitive activity is so strong that birth and death depend upon it, there is no need of a controller or God. Again, if you say that a controller is needed because the material energy does not have the power to act, one may answer that if the bonds of affection you have created are disturbed by fruitive action, no one will raise children with affection. Instead, everyone will cruelly neglect his children. Since you have cut the bonds of affection that compel a parent to raise his child, you appear inexperienced and unintelligent. So she's still speaking, blaming God for all these problems. My dear son, I am helpless and very much aggrieved. You should not give up my company. Just look at your lamenting father. We are helpless because without a son, we shall have to suffer the distress of going to the darkest hellish regions. You are the only hope by which we can get out of these dark regions. Therefore, I request you not to go any further with the merciless Yam. So she's calling her son back. Please come back to us. My dear son, you have slept a long time. Now please get up. Your playmates are calling you to play. Since you must be very hungry, please get up and dissipate our lamentation. My dear son, I am certainly most unfortunate, for I can no longer see your mild smiling. You have closed your eyes forever. I therefore conclude that you have been taken from this planet to another, from which will not return. My dear son, I can no longer hear your pleasing voice. So she's gone a bit crazy at the moment, lamenting for her son. Shukadeva Goswami continued, accompanied by his wife, who was thus lamenting for her dead son, King Citraketu began crying loudly with an open mouth, being greatly aggrieved. As the king and queen lamented, all the male and female followers joined them in crying. Because of the sudden accident, all the citizens of the kingdom were almost unconscious. When the great sage Ankira understood that the king was almost dead, in an ocean of lamentation, he went there with Narada Rishi. So, very strong situation there. The whole kingdom is mourning at the moment because of the death of the son and caused by the co-wife. So many things here. Attachment by the king and queen to the son, which they should realize is everything is temporary. Children temporary, lives temporary. Everything comes with a shelf life. Okay, they are mourning because he's gone before them, but they've like really lost their stability, the balance, composure in all this. And then the co-wives of enviousness, not thinking about the kingdom, and why a son was necessary, why the king had to marry so many times so he could have a son. They're just thinking about oh, I feel so sick, I feel so useless, I feel so neglected. So we will just kill the cause of that, and that is the son. Let's kill it. And they think that will take away their problems. No, it will just create more problems for them. So thank you for joining. Praveen Mataji, my father and Hinaji. This group is getting smaller, smaller. I know there's a lot of issues. Uh, everyone's busy and things going on, and there's a lot of flu about as well. But thank you for making the effort and joining. I'd love to hear from Hina Mataji on this. Hare Krishna.
Hi, Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the class. Yeah, I like this. Very instructive. This particular pastime and Citraketu's desire to have a son. Um, lots of lessons in there for us. Even despite the fact that he was warned um, that the son will cause him lamentation, jubilation, he didn't really care much really for the lamentation part, or maybe underestimated the lamentation that it would bring. But it does make you think that there's two sides in life. There's happiness and there's misery, which coexist in the world. You can't have one without the other. Generally, there's all they exist together really.
Mm.
Um, and then his material attachment to his son caused him so much pain as well, and that would just put him on a downward path. It was almost like blinded, really. You could say blinded by his attachment. He neglected his other wives. That caused him to that caused a lot of jealousy amongst them, and then that led to the wives committing the offense by killing Chitraketu's son. So it was almost like a lot of this you could argue could have been avoided essentially if he wasn't so attached. I was thinking, it had a knock-on effect. Basically, his behavior and his because of that material attachment to his son had a knock-on effect around on other people, the way he treated other people as well. So yeah, that was kind of my reflections on it. So thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, I mean, one thing because obviously we read this before, something I learned from this very important lesson, that if something's not happening, it's God's protection. There's a reason behind it, which was just let it go. If we've tried our best, I mean, 10 million wives, I think that sort of gives a hint that it's not meant to happen. So if something's not happening, then just let it go, because it really can't be a good thing if it's not happening. It really can't be good for you. But he was not willing to let it go, and then he's told that you may get some temporary happiness, but there'll be sadness as well involved. Not even bothered about the sadness. I mean, just think if okay, let's say if the son wasn't poisoned, he wasn't killed, he grows up into like very brat, so spoiled brat, which he would have been because he was only child in the house, or yeah, only child in the house, and especially son. He would have been very, very spoiled. And then just think how much problem he would have, how much lamentation it would have caused, not just to the parents, maybe to the whole kingdom, kind of things he would have got up to, abusing people, using people like that. He could have caused mayhem in the kingdom and tarnish the name of King Chitraketu. But king he wasn't concerned with anything like that. Everything, it was all go. He can do whatever he wants as long as I have a son. So it was better, really. Providence was kind to them that before he even got to that, the son was taken away from that perspective. That it's because there is duality. There's always duality for everything. Whichever way it comes. So, if the son had been like a destructive person, then that they would have been, the parents would have died so many times every time they hear what he's got up to. They would have died so many times better that he died. And that they probably would have been saying, like, there's a big dialogue, isn't it? That why didn't you die at birth or something? This like thing when the child misbehaves, they said, I should have died at birth, or when you were young, we had to, or didn't why didn't we die before we see all this, this destruction that you're causing? So there's a reason behind it, but they were warned, but they wouldn't let it go. Read Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes. Yeah, it just shows us, how strong our desires are. And although he was told that there will be jubilation, lamentation, but he didn't really care about it because he just wanted a son. So it shows like material attachments are a cause of misery only, how much misery it caused. And we have to trust in the will of God. Whatever we get is the mercy of the Lord. And like we see in our lives as well, like people, they go to demigods asking for, oh, this happened, my son should get married and this, and then we see the marriages break because what I feel is it was not meant to happen. That's why it didn't happen in the first place. But when we keep begging to the demigods, then things do happen, but they don't last. So like one priest, he, I went to the temple. This is only recent. And he said, Mataji, शादी करवा देते हैं आपके बेटे की इस साल हो जाएगी. मैं कहती नहीं पंडित जी अगर होनी है ना वो अपने आप होगी, मैंने किसी तरह नहीं करवानी है ना. मतलब what he meant was कोई पूजा करवा दो ये कर दो. So we just have to have faith in Krishna, and whatever we get is the best for us. And if we're not getting something, obviously, so that's why I always feel, it is Krishna's will. Whatever is happening is the best. But like if it happens the other way, it's not going to last, or it's not the right thing for us. So we just have to have faith in Krishna. And devotional service, like there is no loss or diminution, when we are engaged in devotional service. But other sorts of things, we just get material benefits and we lose them. So we have to do our sons and see what is more beneficial and stay on the right path for bhakti. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you. Yeah, Pundrika Prabhu has gone to India because his father is, I don't know whether you know.
I know Mataji. I'll message him because he did join last week, so that is probably serious at the moment. So yeah. Well.
Yes. Yeah.
So did he join this morning or not?
He didn't join yesterday. He joined this morning. Yes. Yeah. A little bit later because he was coming back from hospital, so he joined a bit later. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, this protection. I mean, just thinking about how much of the kingdom's wealth he gave away because he had a son. They spent so much on celebration. He went over the top on celebrating. And like you said, that's like marriages that people spend so much money on marriages, and we hear about it after a few weeks they break up, and they've gone like ridiculously out of their way importing things and this and that, to celebrate the wedding, and it's gone. It's like the Ambanis, like they spend like 500 million pounds on this. Obviously, that must have like business reasons behind it as well. It's good publicity for them, but I hope this lasts because they gone really overboard. Most expensive wedding in the world. Yeah, so nobody knows. Nobody knows. We do get carried away, but nobody knows the future. We can't predict. And whatever happens, like you say, it's the mercy of the Lord. Because Lord, if it's like if it's any reversals or advancements, it's still mercy of the Lord, because the Lord knows what's best for us. Whichever way it happens, it's still His mercy, because that in the long run that will be beneficial for us. And you want to say something?
Yeah. Yeah. This pastime tells us about that whatever brings us happiness brings distress, as we've been saying in our own way. We have been describing it. And we should be contented with whatever God has given us in this life. This life is temporary anyway, it's an illusion. And still we think that we are going to be here forever. Whatever we will get in this life is also temporary. So sooner we understand it, the better for us. And we should be happy with whatever is sanctioned to us by the Lord due to our past karma, due to our prarabdha, or due to our present condition. Lord knows what is best for us. And we should try to do the best within those circumstances. Then we'll be able to resist the modes of nature as well. If we are not being contented with what we have, then we start fighting, isn't it, with our situation, with people, with our minds, with our actions, with our words. And that just brings us into a spiral of, distress for ourselves in future. We are actually binding ourselves more and more by doing that. So instead of getting into the karam bandhana, we have to become vimukta. We should try to come out of it. And if we don't, then what we are doing is just going through the debts of the last life, whatever we accrued in the last life, in the past lives. We're trying to just, pay off the debts of our last lives through our karmas in this life, through whatever good or bad we suffer. And after learning so much from these pastimes, after hearing so much from the kathas we hear, we relish. It's nothing if we are not able to apply them somewhere in our life and try to understand what do these stories, the pastimes, they tell us. So everything comes with a consequence, and God's rejection is God's protection. If we can remember even this much, I think we'll be able to sail through our lives better than how we are doing at the moment. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So thank you so much. Next week
Can
we'll
we hear from your dad as well, because they've got more experience in life? So how they feel, God's will.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. So let's do a couple of rounds for everyone. And we'll do a round for Pundikaksh Prabhu's dad for his good health. So Mataji would like to start first, then Hina Mataji, if that's okay. Mataji.
That Mataji, Hina Mataji.
I think we've got time today if you want to go
Yeah.
for